Welcome to Whatever Next. I'm one of your hosts, Adeline Barra, and I'm here with your co-hosts, Josephine J. and Hannah Phoeben-Smith. We are three Chinese adoptees who met in 2019 through an adoptee Facebook group in Edinburgh, Scotland. Together, we created the Whatever Next website in January 2021 and have been so grateful for the support and feedback that we've received so far. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, and was adopted in 1996 at 8 months old from Hunan, China. Josephine grew up in South Hampstead, London, and was adopted at 18 months old from Hangzhou, China in 1996. Hannah is from Dorset, England, and was adopted at 20 months old from Nanning, China in 2002. In this podcast, we want to share some conversations that we often found ourselves having between us as adoptees, but now we want to make an effort to open them up to those who aren't. It can feel easy to compartmentalize these adoption-related chats into adoptee-only spaces, but we want to try to change that to help make these conversations feel less daunting and isolating. These will range from childhood experiences, racism, dating, traveling back to China, and identity. In this first episode, we'll be sharing a few examples of discussions that we've already had with people around us, like a significant other, a non-adoptive best friend, and an adoptive mother. We want to try to have these honest dialogues, not only to share with you, but to also document change in ourselves for the future. We hope you enjoy. This is Whatever Next.
Who wants to start? Who's got the nicest voice?
I think Josephine has the nicest voice.
I think Addie has the most welcoming voice.
You think so? No.
What's your customer service voice?
Oh my god, no. Hi, how are you? My name is Adeline. I'll be taking care of you.
Oh my gosh.
So this is Whatever Next. We started it in January 2021, but we all met each other in Edinburgh in 2019?
2019, yeah. I think tail end of 2019.
Through an adoptee Facebook group, and we are all Chinese adoptees. Yeah, we started recording for fun our conversations because we would always inevitably talk about adoption when we were all three hanging out. And so one night we kind of just recorded for fun to see what would happen and to see how it would feel listening back to our voices and listening to what we ended up talking about adoption. And then we started to do it again and again. And then we had the idea of creating it into a website.
It would be really interesting having it as a time capsule, and especially as adoption is something which you grew up with and will be with you for forever because it's part of your identity. And
I think it'll be cool to watch how it evolves over the years, and we always say that it'll be a lifelong project.
It would be really exciting looking back. I mean, even the conversations that we had at the beginning of this year, to see how our thoughts have changed and the conversations and how we've shifted to different topics, which was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, adoption is a lifelong thing, isn't it? You don't really have an unsubscribe button as much as you would like to sometimes.
Yeah, we're stuck with it.
But basically, no, we started the website because we wanted to kind of broaden conversations around adoption. I think we all noticed that there was a certain degree of kind of inertia and gatekeeping within some of the adoption communities we found online. And a lot of the adoption narrative that, or at least I grew up with, was very centered around the kind of child's perspective. And now as a young adult, it's kind of like, what do I do? And I think we all kind of wanted, we just found ourselves having the same conversations about, how do we do this? And I mean, people are choosing to have kids later as well. And so they're trying to turn to methods of contraception like IVF, surrogacy, and adoption. And so I think it's something that people should be informed in if they are perhaps looking to adopt, because these, they should understand some of the problems that their kids might go through.
And how did we end up getting to the name Whatever Next?
So Whatever Next was a kids book my mum used to read to me when I was little. It's about a bear who wants to go to the moon in a cardboard box. And I think we all kind of gravitated towards the name because, I mean, that's the whole point of it, isn't it? It's whatever next. We don't know what we're doing. It's we're all works in progress and we're just trying to model this thing through, but
kind of just flying blind.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're learning on the hoof. And I mean, this last year and a half, the pandemic and everything, I don't think anyone really knows whatever next. but hopefully we can work it out together.
And what does the 2020 part mean?
2020 is because that was the year that we started talking about these things seriously. It was also the only available domain that we could buy, and I think also 2020 vision, because we want to bring a bit of clarity to some of these conversations, and especially some of the more divisive issues with adoption, and kind of tackle them from both sides, and I think work out for ourselves as well as anyone who's tuning in with us where we all stand on those.
Yeah, I think one of our big ethos for Whatever Next is having an open dialogue and opening conversations and discussions that feel uncomfortable when talking about adoption topics, like is adoption trauma versus is adoption love, talking about the fog, talking about race.
Are interracial adoptees considered people of colour?
Yeah.
Or should they be? Or as an interracial adoptee, do you identify as one?
Because I think when I first started getting more involved into the adoptee community, I felt like there was always a predominant opinion, especially on online forums, and a variety of topics and heavy topics. And seeing that there was one popular opinion that everybody seemed to agree on, especially in like the echo chamber of social media, it felt like there wasn't a lot of room for open discussion and thinking about the other side of the conversation. So I'm happy that at Whatever Next, we have the space to do that, I guess. And I hope that listeners will appreciate that too.
What have you found? Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to know what have you found from working on the project? Like what's come out for you?
I'm excited to have like different conversations, not only with you guys with Whatever Next, but I'm starting to have more conversations with the people around me in my life about adoption or about race, about just growing up and being an adult. So it's helped me open discussions outside of Whatever Next because of Whatever Next, if that makes sense. What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, similar with you too, is that that it has opened up discussions with my friends and family. And I mean, for me, I hadn't really talked or much about my adoptive identity. Well, since coming to uni, I only sort of just started exploring that part of my identity. And talking and chatting with you guys has been really, really lovely, because I have time to self-reflect on topics which we discuss, and I can learn from you too. Lots of pearls of wisdom.
As from you, we can learn from you.
Yeah.
As well.
I'm not sure you can, but yeah, it's really lovely chatting with you guys. And these Friday sessions I always look forward to, and it's been a great time, just keeping that part of the week where I can reflect on that part. And where would you suggest, if someone was interested in learning more about this, where would you go for that, for more information?
If you want to learn about adoption, I think you should talk to adoptees. It's one of those things that it's very much like a learn by living, and also everyone's going to have such different opinions, and that's one of the things that I've really learned from this project. Obviously not just like go grab an adoptee and kind of shake them and ask them what they think of everything, but adoption is a personal thing, and therefore personal narratives and personal histories are going to be your greatest base for understanding. And I think that's what we want to do with this website, isn't it? Kind of bring a few of those to light. Also because the representation of adoption in media, and this is something I know we've talked about to quite a great extent, is kind of a bit broad brush. And kind of in Disney, it's a big one. Like there's only 3 Disney movies where both parents make it to the end. It's and one of those is 101 Dalmatians. But I think the orphan complex is used as a big crutch. So you have Harry Potter, you have Bambi, you have The Lion King, and it's meant to be this big formative moment that
Harry Potter,
all the superhero films, basically.
Yeah. That it's this big kind of turning point. It's not all about that. There's a lot of down days and there's a lot of stuff to work through. You don't just wake up and jump on Pride Rock and defeat Voldemort.
Adoptee narratives definitely need more representation in media, for sure.
And not the orphan. Like, that's
And not the orphan, not the baby orphan.
That was such a bad film. Oh. And so what do you think adoptees tuning in could learn from this podcast and the website?
I don't know. It's a tough one because I think I spent a lot of my teenage years not wanting to interact with the adoptee community because I think I was trying to work things out on my own. But I think knowing that other people are probably going through the same thing, like you're not that unique in your thoughts and your feelings, but that other people are going through the same thing.
Yeah, I think if I were to listen to something like this when I was younger, I think I would have found it comforting to hear older adoptees work things out in conversation, but at the same time not claim that they know everything. It's okay to still have questions and to have these open discussions and have different opinions, to leave space for like answering your own questions. And if they listen to the podcast,
I mean, going through some of the things that I think we're going through, like kind of dating and finding jobs and just navigating adultish life, because that's like, I don't know what to do. And I think it's very comforting to be able to talk to you guys and just be like, had a really shit shift at the restaurant. And also, that's not just because I'm adopted. Like, adoption isn't your whole personality. There's so many other things on that. But I think it does kind of play into some of the interactions that you have daily, especially with relationships. I think that's a big one. And kind of like how you guys navigate those waters.
Speaking of relationships.
Oh, go on. Is this a trauma dump?
Ooh.
No. I was going to introduce one of the clips.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good idea.
So since this is the pilot, we want to share a little bit about the conversations that we've recorded and had previously to give an idea of what kind of topics and conversations we're going to have for the podcast. These are some of the clips that we've already had in interviews with people who are in our lives, like our significant other and parents and best friends who are not adopted. In this episode, we're going to share 3 clips. One is between me and, or should I say that it's me? I mean,
You're going to work out from your voice.
Yeah,
figure it out. Some other American adoptee who sounds just like me, but who is not me. Yeah, I did an interview with my boyfriend talking about adoption and being in an interracial relationship, which I think was uncomfortable for both of us, but in the end, we both felt better at the end of the conversation.
But part of the reason that we did this is because we wanted to bring these conversations outside the adoptive triangle. And the adoptive triangle is the kind of the adoptee, the mother, the adoptee, the birth parents, and the adoptive parents. And so that's why we turned to our nearest and dearest, because we wanted to hear about how it affected them and kind of their thoughts going forward. And because I think it is also something daunting for them to know how to talk to us about it. And that's one of the things that came up in my interview with my best friend that's going to come up, is like she didn't always know what to say or how to say it. And that wasn't through kind of ill will. That was just through kind of feeling a bit unsure, because you don't have to talk to people about these big things.
Do you feel, since we're together and that adoption has become I've become more involved with adoption and the adoption community in my life, do you feel like you feel obligated to learn more, or do you want to learn more as I learn more?
Both. I feel like I should, like from myself, I feel like I should be more proactive in learning about it. And for, so that I can support you in what you're doing and understand a certain amount.
Thanks, dude. That's nice of you. I know it must not be easy to process everything that I'm processing and learning about, because I mean it's difficult for me, so I can imagine how it looks or feels like as an outsider as well, because it is all very like complex once you get into the nitty-gritty.
Is that how you view it? It's like if you're adopted, you're the insider and you have more insight into it, and then if you're not, it's like impossible to grasp.
That's how it feels like on my side, yeah. Because, I mean, if you're not adopted, you don't really have any, like reference or, something to like relate it back to. So it's kind of learning from scratch, not in a good or bad way, just as like I don't expect you to understand, you know, like my whole life experience, because it's not fair to you, you know, just like I don't know what it feels like to be in your shoes, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like that it's impossible to grasp on your end?
I think, yeah, probably impossible to grasp the feelings, because, you know, I can imagine that there's a lot of sadness that comes with thinking about, you know, the means of being put up for adoption and being adopted. Whereas I don't have, you know, that, like the sense of where do I come from? Who are my parents? These kinds of things, these kinds of like, you know, existential questions, which I don't have to have.
Yeah.
I've got enough existential angst without having that on top of it as well. But I can, yeah. So I don't think I'm able to grasp that, which is something I, probably wouldn't want to have to grasp with. But,
I think that, it's difficult to have conversations with people who aren't adopted about adoption. But even though it's difficult, doesn't mean that, you know, we shouldn't try. But I think it's something that everybody is still trying to figure out how to navigate. Because I was telling, I don't know, I tell everybody how, like, whenever I meet another adoptee, or even just between us starting this website, speaking about adoption comes as, it's very fluid and natural, and it's very easy to talk about it because, of course, you know, we can relate to each other in our personal experiences. But it's weird having like people in my life who I feel very close to, but in this whole other area, compartmentalized. Do you feel like it's difficult?
what to talk about or to think about?
Both.
Yeah, I think in the way that, like in this situation, I feel like I'm free to talk about, because you know that, like, that's the topic that we're talking about, so it's not going to catch you off guard. So I feel like in this situation I could, you know, almost bring up anything, and maybe, you know, you're in the right place to deal with it. But, you know, in days where we're just hanging out, I just don't think I would want to bring it up in case it, you know, put a dark cloud over you and you went inside yourself and you're thinking about it a lot. You know?
Yeah, but you don't have to worry about that. I mean, I guess it's different because we're together, and you know, you should be able to ask me whatever you want. And adoption, there are some dark topics in it, but it's not every time that I think about adoption that it puts a dark cloud over me. Sometimes if I talk about adoption, I feel very like light and happy because I've bridged a new connection in conversation, you know? So it can be positive. It's not always sad.
Sometimes I don't want to roll the dice. But yeah, I should try and question.
Well, it means a lot that you're open and, you know, want to try at least.
That's the least I can do.
That was the second time Rowan and I did the recording, because the first time we were both really nervous and the audio didn't turn out very well. But I think the second time around, we both felt a little bit more confident, had a little bit more to say, because the first time we tried to do the recording, it was also the first time we sat down and only talked about adoption. So that was a first for us in general. So I think there was a lot of pressure and a bit of awkwardness from it. But I'm glad we still recorded it, because it's just a part of the
process.
A
tough conversations to have.
Yeah. But I'm glad that he's open to it. Yeah, willing to just kind of sit and listen sometimes.
Yeah, and sometimes that's all you can ask of them, isn't it? And it's great that he's willing to try.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of questions other people would be interested in hearing between us as a couple.
If anyone has any suggestions, holler at us.
Yep. At whatevernext2020@gmail.com.
Good job, Hannah. And I think it's interesting that we talk about having open dialogues, and like that's what we like preach, but I'm happy that we're practicing it too, and like going through it as like a new thing ourselves. I don't know, I think that's good.
Did you play him Hester's?
I did play him Hester's after that. He was really impressed with her. like how I was too. He thought the conversation was really insightful and honest and very, very self-reflective and refreshing to hear a conversation that didn't feel like it was just running around in circles.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
So I'm really lucky to have her.
Like, what was your conversation with Hester like?
It was great. I don't think I've ever had a conversation. I mean, I've had conversations with her about it, but I've never had a conversation with her about it in that way. I mean, we were both rather drunk. I think there was so much editing to be done. Also, just how much I and her in conversations. It was really great. She is so amazing. She's really eloquent. And she's such a great thinker, and like all those things come through. And it was great to hear her perspective on adoption and how she would think about adopting maybe in later life as well. And I think that's a conversation I think that's come of this that I've been talking to more friends about, kind of their own non-adoptive friends, if that was something that they would consider. Should I play
the clip?
Yeah. Do you think knowing me's changed your views on adoption?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very pro-adoption, and, you know, I'd consider adopting myself. I mean, it doesn't really stress me out that much because I've always thought if you had a baby who wasn't yours, it's still a baby, and I think you still have the same instincts. I've never really been a believer in the the arguments based around, oh, you have a baby and then, you know, I know that people go through postnatal depression and not everyone connects with their babies. And when I was younger, I was just, if someone cares for you and is your person who's there for you always, that's motherhood. I never thought that if I adopted a child that I wouldn't bond with them as well as if I had my own child. But I feel if you think like that, you're going into parenthood a bit wrong. The idea of parenthood isn't to make a mini you, it's to help a person become a person. So adoption wouldn't get in the way of that. I mean, obviously, I think if you are adopting in a racist world, a kid of a different race, like those are all considerations to have going in. But the most important thing is whether you're willing to love a child. Adoptees hold this very unique space. And I feel weird saying adoptees because obviously everyone who's been adopted has experienced that so differently. But I think that's the power of being an adoptee and getting together as a group is that you have such diverse experiences while also having these common threads, which I feel like enlighten you more about what it is to be a family, what it is to love someone, what it is to be a human and interact with society than it would from someone who's lived within an assumption. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
No, I think it does. And I think lived within assumptions is a really good way of putting it because there's so many question marks and blanks in adoptive narratives. People who aren't adopted just never kind of question because they've always been filled.
I love that clip.
That's just the whole interview.
It's time to the Hester show.
Yeah.
You should have her own podcast. She's great.
She speaks so eloquently. Did you feel nervous starting the conversation with her?
No, I don't think so. I mean, she's one of my closest friends, and so I've not really ever struggled being open. Well, I think that was something that does go into the interview that she says that I was not as open as I am now when I was a teenager. So I think maybe for her, that was something that she felt that she couldn't talk to me about, and I wasn't in a place that I wanted to. But I've never felt any difficulty kind of broaching complicated subjects with her because we really talk about everything. And there was so much of that conversation I had to cut out because it was just dumb conversations about how we'd embezzled inheritance out of a dog. But yeah, no, that's the great thing about friends, isn't it? You can talk to them about really anything, all the dumb stuff crosses your mind.
It goes from that to embezzled money.
Yeah, I know it was kind of like big highs and big lows. So many apples.
Hannah, how did you feel having a conversation about adoption with your mom?
Yeah, no, I really loved the interview with my mum. I was so nervous. I was so nervous at the beginning because I didn't know what to expect, and I think that was one of the sort of recent talks where we just sit down and talk about adoption, and it was so lovely and just sitting down and opening up about her journey. And with these conversations, you can learn a lot from one another, and definitely hearing about their process, my parents' process of adopting me and what they've gone through. And I think that these sort of conversations should be brought up more because sort of when we were talking earlier about the media, how it's normally sort of one-sided and always thinking, oh, it's the happy family, but you never really delve into what factors or what events have led up to that. Yeah, so it's important to show those conversations, really, and experiences.
So you hadn't spoken to your parents about adoption that much before this?
No, well, my parents would always have the sort of 5th of December or something where I think it was the day they got my papers or something, and they sit me down, but I have no recollection really of that. And since going off to school and things, that there hasn't been, it just hadn't really brought that up. And on my side, it was just thinking, oh, what is adoption, but not really thinking about it. And so it's only in the past couple of years where I have started thinking about it, and through whatever next, it's been lovely getting them on board with this project and sort of much easier to talk about it with them. When did that sort of moment, I don't know, that of realisation that me being Chinese or different looking, I don't know, would affect?
Well, I was shocked the first time when we got back and landed at Heathrow Airport, and there was I think it was a Sunday or something, we got this elderly, middle-aged man saying that we had to take you to the health centre first. So we went to the health centre for a chest x-ray, I think he said, and we got there and they said, that's ridiculous, we don't x-ray children. But while we're here, we'll get you into the system, which I was very impressed because the next day you were here. And then when we came back into the immigration hall, passport control, which we're just used to queuing through and walking out the other end, there was nobody in it. It's a vast, vast cavern of a place. And it was dark, and there was just a very officious lady in a dark suit with a little spotlight on her desk. And you were in the pushchair. And I just thought, we've been to the British consul, it's all stamped in the passport. I thought we were going to sail through. And I'm going through, and she said, stop. And she said, I need to see more paperwork. And your father, who's quite mild-mannered, picked up his briefcase with 2.5 years of paperwork and sort of plonked it in front of her and said, which bit of paper would you like to look at? And I was aware that we'd had a long journey, and my mother, being of a certain age, I knew she was sitting the other side of passport control waiting for us with the taxi to take us all home. And I was suddenly realised that we'd got an alien. We got a Chinese baby, and it wasn't
an alien.
Yes, well, I think that's what you call it. It's a non. I don't mean thank you. No, I mean a non-Brit. You're sort of outside. That's the first time it really struck home.
I love your mum's voice, and I love the way that you both say in the same way.
Oh,
And the clock in the background.
Nice and therapeutic.
How did you feel when you were talking about that with her?
The racial side of things,
Or just in general?
or in general, in kind of racial terms, I kind of knew what the answer was going to be, and so I wasn't shocked. But in general, I didn't really know what to expect because it was our first proper sit down and chat. But I was just so inspired, I don't know, by how much they had done, what they've gone through, really, in the process of adoption. But it was, I learned a lot what their thoughts were at the time, how it's changed.
Have you had any conversations with her since?
I have a little bit. She was actually the day after, she was thinking, well, actually, I'd really want some time just to swat up, then come back, and so then I'm more prepared.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's really sweet. But
Get her back, do another one.
yeah, play that one and see her reaction. Her adoptive parent reacts to something. That could be the thumbnail. But it's definitely made it more accessible. I don't know. Let's
put those conversations on the table.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly it.
But what about you, Addie? Was that something that your mum spoke to you about?
not really. unless it was on my mind. I mean, adoption specifically, we didn't really talk about because I didn't really start talking about it or thinking about it with myself until recently, like a few years ago. And that was more of like an internal process rather than talking about it out loud with friends or family or let alone my mom. So that was probably one of the first conversations that I had with her as an adult talking about adoption, just straight up. I had like brought it up probably throughout the years with curiosity of wanting to go back or wanting to do a search, but she, I think, that wouldn't even know where to start and gets kind of emotionally like overwhelmed when we think about the adoption and everything and with the orphanage. And she's like me, like she'll like start crying every time like we'll think about it. And I don't, because I'm really aware of that. I try not to like go too deep because I don't want her to get upset,
But let's take this back to the very beginning. When did you guys first find out you were adopted?
They never really sat me down and told me that I was adopted. I feel like it was just always a part of the story. It was never something that they had to like not confess in a way, but like reveal to me. It was just a part of like, I'm Addie, but I'm also adopted, like a part of my identity from the get-go. So I was 8 months when I was adopted. My two younger sisters, Lena and Nora. Lena was adopted when she was 2 months from Vietnam, and Nora was adopted when she was 2.5 years old from China, a different province. So I grew up with two moms, a lesbian couple, in Kansas City, Missouri. And we were clearly not the average family growing up in Midwest America, but I didn't really realize that until I got older. I think that's when I started to feel more aware of how people perceived me and my family. So there was a time when I kind of stopped talking about my family and didn't tell people that I was adopted and had gay parents. But I eventually got over that after college, and I started to meet a more diverse group of people, like traveling and just being out of Kansas City in general. But both of my parents were very like easygoing growing up, kind of let us run wild, weren't strict, and really encouraged traveling and having an open mind.
Because your mom had that book, didn't she, that she put together?
My mom had like our journey book. So she kept all of the like paperwork and documents and pictures and journal entries. And we celebrated gotcha days, adoption days growing up. So that was always exciting for me because I felt like I had a second birthday. For adoption, yeah, it just was always a part of the story. We did have conversations about it when I was 13, when we went back to China, because we did go back to the orphanage and everything. So she is supportive. Like she encouraged me to like travel back to China and like ask questions and talk about it. It's not like she like ever tried to avoid it.
What was her reaction when you talk about going back to search?
I mean, she's supportive. She's always said that she would support me in it. I think she just doesn't have any idea where to start.
But you went to those camps with your sisters growing up?
Yeah, I think she did her best in trying to normalize our family dynamics of being adopted and with gay parents. And because growing up, we were surrounded by other families like us. So probably a good handful of my adoptee friends also have gay parents that I grew up with. And she also made it a point for us to be involved with the Vietnam Culture Camp, which would happen like every summer and bring families across the U.S. who have adopted from Vietnam to this like family camp / conference for like 3 to 4 days. And we would all just hang out with each other. And for us as kids, it was mostly just kind of getting to hang out with friends rather than talk about adoption. But it was also a time for parents to get together and for them to chat as well. Definitely part of our lives growing up. So I feel lucky that we were involved with that.
One of the questions that we get asked a lot, or one of the perceptions, I think, because people see our Instagram handle and they see UK and they don't really look further. And so they kind of assume that we're all UK adoptees and therefore we share certain opinions or kind of like the UK adoptee experience is very different from the US. I mean, from knowing us and talking to us, do you think that that's been a kind of markedly different experience for you?
Yeah, I think that once we start talking more about ourselves and talking more in general throughout the podcast, people learning our stories, I hope that they can see that whatever opinions and ideas we have from our life experience doesn't necessarily stem from our nationality. So if we have difference in opinions, that isn't necessarily because I'm from the US and you're from the UK. It's just because we're different people and have different life experiences in general. And the whole point of our website is that we're bringing together voices of adoptees, no matter where they're from. What do you guys think?
I think one of the things that I've found through talking to other adoptees is it very much depends on the families, that how willing they are to talk about it and address these issues. I mean, in terms of the differences, I would say that there's a different racial history within the US, especially when it comes to kind of Chinese immigration and just racial history in general. Also because America has far more Korean adoptees, and so they're kind of the precursor to us. And I think what's slightly weird about us is that we are this time bracket in history, because China's more or less closed its borders to international adoption. And so it was that brief period from kind of like the late 1980s, I suppose, until kind of mid 2005, I suppose. I mean, because I think I've through speaking to Hannah and through speaking to other UK adoptees, I do think I was quite lucky to grow up in London. It was more multicultural than I think Hannah had.
Yeah, I think when I met you for the first time in Edinburgh, we were talking about how when I came to Edinburgh, I was like, wow, it's so diverse, coming from the southeast, and where it was predominantly white. And then, yeah, when I came to Edinburgh, that's how I was thinking, wow, it's so diverse, and that got the ball rolling and thinking more about my racial identity, really.
I find that really funny when people go to Edinburgh and they're like, wow, this is so diverse. I'm just like, literally show me where.
That's how I was like when I met you, Hannah, for the first time, and you were saying that, and I'm like, what? I'm like, this place is diverse. I'm like, girl.
I was adopted from China when I was 20 months old, and I'm an only child. I think I do remember when my mum sat me down when I was age 5, but it's always been known to me anyway that I was adopted. But it's not like a daily reminder saying, oh, by the way, you're adopted. It's
your daily reminder on your phone. Ding, ding, you're adopted.
But yeah, it's been, I mean, because you're always part of the family, and yeah, knowing that I was adopted was, throughout my childhood, but really reflecting on that and what adoption has mean has only really come about since coming to uni or changing in that environment.
I think the question came up kind of when I was really little, and I think the next door neighbour was pregnant, and I was asking about, where babies come from, and I think my mum said, babies come from the mum's tummies, and I was like, did I grow in yours? And she was like, no, darling, you came on a plane from China. And then so that started the whole kind of, this is what we did. Obviously, we love you very much, but we couldn't have our own child, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, it was one of those things that kind of just was a fact of growing up. I'm also an only child, apart from the dog. I think I remember when I was little, my parents like, we could go back and we could adopt another one if you wanted, a sister. And I was like, no, I'd rather have a Cocker Spaniel. Didn't get one, but I was adopted from China when I was, I think, about 18 months old. And when I was 18, I managed to go back and I managed to find my birth family, which has been a bit of a rocky road. It was a big can of worms. It was something that I wanted to do. I definitely do it again. That's the question people ask most often. Are you glad that you found them? And I am glad that I found them, but it's been a mixed bag of experiences.
Have you been back since when you were 18?
Yeah, so my degree was in Chinese studies because I was like, well, I look Chinese, I look like I speak Chinese, I might as well get around to doing it. And I think a lot of it was trying to reconnect with the country and kind of understand some of the history and culture. And I'm glad that I did that. I spent a year of that degree in Shanghai. One of my sisters actually lives in Shanghai, so I was able to see her a bit then, see the family. And I've been back since to visit. My sister got married 2 years ago now, so we actually got to go over for the wedding, which was really lovely. So she wanted to have a pig baby, a kid born in the year of the pig. And so she specifically
pig baby,
her wedding and then her conception and later her pregnancy to fall in the pig year. So I've got so he's a pig baby. I've got a little nephew, and I was hoping to go say,
they wrapped him in blankets.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I knitted him like a little hat over lockdown because I got into knitting, and I sent it over and it got lost in the post. So it just turned up and it does not fit.
Oh no!
Is he grown? Misjudged. No, I just don't know how big babies are.
Some of them have big heads.
How small did you do it?
It was tiny. It was about the size. It would have fit. I want to say like a little doll, but it definitely does not fit him. It fits his foot. It's kind of like one of those, those innocent smoothie hats. It's a bit like one of those, only like 2 sizes bigger.
Oh my gosh, that's tiny.
But he is a big baby aside from that, but also I misjudged his head size.
Oh,
So these are examples of the types of conversations that we want to have for the podcast. A lot of the content that we're going to be talking about is already on our website, which can be found at
www.whatevernext2020.co.uk.
Yeah.
Or on our Instagram.
Yeah.
Whatevernext2020.
Thank you, Solus Productions, for giving us this opportunity.
We're really excited
Thank you to the
working
poor
on this
sound guys.
podcast.
Thank you for our friends and family. If you have any questions, email us at whatevernext2020@gmail.com.
Whatever Next is chosen to help support Rape Crisis Scotland because of all the work that they do to help end sexual violence. They work with 17 independent local rape crisis centres spread across Scotland, as well as running a national helpline year-round to support anyone affected by sexual violence. They also work with schools to help teach consent and safe sex and campaign to change legislation and attitudes that allow sexual violence and those who practice it to prevail. It should go without saying that ending sexual violence is a matter that each of us take very seriously. That's why we've decided to donate the profit raised from some of the stickers that we're selling to Rape Crisis Scotland. If you want to head over to our website, they're on sale, and also through our Instagram if you just want to DM us. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Whatever Next. You can find more of our episodes on Acast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. With thanks to Kyle Webster for editing and mixing this episode. Whatever Next is produced by Solus Productions.